Welcome to the My Lotus Moments podcast, the podcast for women of color to have open and honest dialogue about experiences that we all share, from dating, relationships, mental health, and everything in between. I'm your host, Hope Coleman, a licensed social worker and mental health advocate and coach. To get more information and resources, visit the website at www.hopeinher.com. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome to episode 28 of My Lotus Moments podcast. So it is that time of year again for all you HBCU members out there. It is football season. And as you all know, we don't go to football games just to watch the game. We go to football games for the cheerleaders, the band, and the dancers. And for those who are looking to be a part of that elite group, I felt it was important to get perspective from the people that actually were in it. Now, body image is important, especially when you're a cheerleader and a dancer. But it's not easy, even though they make it look flawless. Sometimes people struggle. And so I wanted to shed a little bit of insight on what it's like to become more accepting and love the body that you're in while you are a part of a creative world. So I have with me two ladies who are former collegiate dance and cheer members. The first we have Chastity Crittenden, who you may remember from the last episode. She started her cheer journey back in elementary school. She cheered throughout her childhood. She cheered for Southern University, as well as she's a former NBA cheerleader who cheered 5 years for the Houston Rockets. Nancy Lynch started her dance journey as a young child as well in Houston, Texas. She came to Southern University. She danced for the Southern University's Dancing Dolls. Currently, Nancy serves as a theater director in Fort Bend ISD. She has instructed theater and dance for over 7 years. You guys can learn more about Nancy and Chastity in the show notes at www.hopeinher.com. Head over there, learn more about them, and if you have any questions, don't forget to send them to me at letstalk@hopeinher.com. Let's get into the show. Starting with you, Chastity. First thing I want to do is let's share your story. Tell everyone your history as a dancer and or cheerleader, and maybe if you can think of one negative experience that you can recall during that time, and how has that changed?
Okay, well, I started cheering when I was probably about, and it's kind of funny how I got into cheerleading. I grew up with 4 boys. At the time, it was 3 of them because the baby boy wasn't here yet. But 3 boys, so I was really into sports. Basketball, football, baseball. Not really, I guess, quote unquote, what we would consider girl sports, at least to my mother. Right. And so I did basketball, I did football, and my mom coached cheer, and she would ask me like every year, you want to do cheerleading? And I'd be like, no. She asked, and then one year she just signed me up. When I was about 10, she signed me up. She was like, oh, you're going to cheer because I'm tired of you being out there with all those boys, and I'm a little concerned. So she got me into cheer, and I mean, I've been cheering ever since, I stuck with other sports, but cheer was kind of what I took into high school, and after the fact, it was just more challenging for me, actually, so I enjoyed it. And so, again, I've been cheering since I was about 11, from park league to middle school. I kind of took a little break when I moved to Louisiana. So my junior year in high school, I picked back up with cheerleading and cheered through college. And then after college, I went on and cheered professionally for the Houston Rockets for 5 years. And so I just got into cheerleading because my mom wanted me to do something that was a little bit more girly in her mind at the time. I don't think she realized that I was going to get that extreme into cheer because by the time I started cheering in Louisiana, we went into All-Star. And then by that time, she was sick of me cheering. She was like, no, you're going to pick high school or All-Star, and that's it. And kind of where I went from there, it became my dream to be a professional cheerleader. And so I kind of worked towards that from the time I got to high school until I achieved that goal. And probably one of a negative experience for me when it came to cheerleading. I kind of have. I'm gonna give you two actually. So my first semi-negative experience was when I started All-Star Cheer. It was again, we had recently moved to Louisiana, and my mom was trying to get me back into some things, and so she was actually coaching at a cheer gym, and so she kind of was like, I really want you to start doing stuff again. Come out and try out for the All-Star team. So I was like, okay. Well, the All-Star team, we moved to Louisiana in 2002, and I just so happened to be the only African-American girl on the team. And so we used to have these little journals that we had to journal in after every practice. And one of the questions that I remember vividly, because my mom was like, oh my God, I can't believe you wrote that in your journal. But my coach at the time asked at the end of practice, name something that makes you, the most uncomfortable with your squad, something that you really want to be more comfortable with. And the statement that I wrote in my journal, and at the time I had to be about 15, was I was uncomfortable that I was the only African American girl, and parents were pulling their daughters off the team when I made the team.
Wow.
And so, at that time, I was 15, and I wasn't really in. I was kind of sheltered, I guess, growing up on military bases, and so prejudices and racism, I hadn't really grasped the concept of it even at the age of 15. And so, of course, my feelings were hurt. These parents don't want their kids on the squad because I'm darker complected than other kids. And so, that kind of hurt my feelings. And so that was my first negative experience with cheer. And then cheering at Southern, I would probably say was my second semi-negative experience. And when I got to college, I then had to really stop wearing my heart on my sleeve because my college coach just was not that guy. You're not going to be able to wear your heart on your sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can remember being in the air one day, and I came down, and he pulls me to the side, and he was like, "You're getting fat."
Whoa.
And I was like, "Huh?" And he was like, "You're getting fat. Are you bloated or something?" And I was like, "No, I don't think I'm bloated." And so, he's like, "Well, you're going to have to look a certain way in the uniform, so you can't be up in the air with sides hanging over the uniform, so we're going to have to get that together. You guys are going to have to start going to Zeus 3 times a week instead of twice a week."
Wow.
And at that time, I was still very much a crybaby type of person. And so I was like, oh, I got out of practice. I called my mom. My coach called me fat. He said I'm not going to be able to fly because I'm getting too big. And but probably after I kind of found my place on the team and got into the conditioning the way I was supposed to, after that, I just learned my coach and I learned his style, and he was an awesome coach, actually. Love him to death. He just didn't filter anything. He expected us to look a certain way, and he expected us to perform a certain way. And so I had to grasp that concept, and I got over it.
So you actually brought up a good point that I'm going to touch on a little bit later. But Nancy, let me go ahead and hear from you.
So I believe that I've always been a dancer at heart. Mm-hmm. My first memories of dancing had to be when I was a little girl, maybe about 4 or 5 years old, dancing in my grandmother's mirror to the Golden Girls theme song. And I just kind of took off from there. Mm-hmm. I had this obsession with Dominique Dawes when I was about 6 or 7. Yes. Maybe that's when she really became, the icon that we knew was the young Black gymnast. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be her so bad. And I told my parents, I really want to do gymnastics. And I think that's when I understood that you could study a skill. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I really want to do gymnastics. And I remember my dad oh no, you're too old. And I was 6. I was like, I'm not too old for gymnastics. But I found out that they just couldn't afford it for me to do that type of training. So I knew that with those kind of skill sets, with movement, that I could be trained. And so it was I really want to do that. So I was about 7 or 8 when my parents put me and my sister in cheerleading. And so I was a little tiny little They had me in the front for everything. And from there, from being a little cheerleader, we stopped in middle school, and I just kind of did my own thing with school and kind of didn't have anything that I really enjoyed doing while in school. So when I got in high school, I asked my mom if I could join the high school dance team. And by then, she was a single parent. And she kind of was like, no, not that. Let's try something else. And I know it's because it was very expensive. I grew up in Texas, and to be on the dance team in high school was like thousands of dollars. And so my mom was like, well, let's just try something else. I really want to do dance.
Right.
So I went ahead and just took the dance classes that the school offered. And I was pulled over my sophomore year in high school. And I was asked by the dance team, instructor, Miss Kelly Laird, if I would go ahead and audition for the dance team. So I did. I auditioned for the dance team, and I made it. Out of tons of girls that came out to audition, I believe it was 30 of us that made it that first year. And in Texas, that's like a good sized team, but like in Louisiana, that's like that team is like way too big.
Right. Yeah.
So I made it that year, and then I went ahead and auditioned for a leadership position on the team, what would be considered like a captain position, and I made it on the officer squad the next year. So I trained really hard, and I worked really hard to master the different skills and the different genres of dance. And then, of course, I went on to college at Southern University. Woo-hoo. Yeah. And I thought it was just going to be like super easy. I've been on this dance team. I've been doing great with dance, and I'm about to dance on this collegiate team. And I auditioned for Dancing Dolls like a lot of girls do. And my first year, I didn't make it. And I know that was really discouraging a little bit. It was a little discouraging the first time, but really I just realized I didn't do that style of stylized jazz that they did. And so then I went ahead and joined the competition dance team, Look Dancers. And then after that, I auditioned for the Dancing Dolls again, and I got on the team. And the rest is history. So if I had to give you one negative experience, I think I just want to say a general overall pressure about body image. I have always been short, and I've always had body. So that was something that was always a thing with either a coach, dance instructor, dance team members. It was always a thing. It was never just, about the dancing. It was always about, well, are you small enough? Are you tall enough? So that was something that was always this pressure of being enough, being, small enough and confident and comfortable enough in my skin. And so at first before I started dance, I actually did track. I should have mentioned that. I did track. And so I was athletic, but just muscular. And when I became a dancer, I didn't have the thin frame, the stereotypical norm of what a dancer should look like. So I always had to fight those boundaries or those limitations that were put in place. So that would be my negative experience with the art form of dance and how it's shaped my life. I've just learned to own every room I walk in. And I realized that I deserve to be there no matter what dance class or dance workshops or anything. I just learned how to own my confidence and also just appreciate and advocate for be an advocate for dance and how it makes me feel and not how I look or how others look doing it.
Exactly. Thank you guys for sharing your story. Now, I know that my level and skill of dance and cheerleading is nowhere compared to you guys, but I do want to share a little bit of my history as well because, I've experienced some type of criticism, within the world of cheerleading as well as dance. So, in the beginning, I was a lot like Chastity. I cheered when I was younger. And I would think I started cheering maybe when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And interestingly enough, just like Chastity, so my older brother is 7 years older than me. And the only way I could like really hang out with him is if I were to do some of the things that he did. So he was in football, he was in the weightlifting, so I would be outside like doing what's those things called? Calf raises and push-ups and all these things. And so as like a 7-year-old, right? So So early on, I began to just be more involved in like Chastity said, boy type things. Even still, I was still active in like cheerleading, dance, soccer, all those things. But I would say when I got to middle school, I was very into cheerleading, and I would believe my very first negative experience would be, I would say, I think it was maybe 8th grade when so the school cheerleading team at the time, we used to wear our socks like up above our calves. I don't know if y'all used to do this back in the day, but this is like 99, maybe 98. And so we our socks above our calves, and the whole team would do that. But one day, right before the game, my coach at the time, she pulled me over to the side and said, your calves are a little too big, and you can't pull your socks up over your calves, so you need to push them down. And I kid you not, that was the first time I became aware of how different I was compared to the other girls. Until then, I was like living in oblivion. And then I looked and I'm like, wow, I really have to pull my socks down. Like it hadn't even dawned on me. But of course, me being the rebel that I was, I pulled them up higher and kept going. But since that point, I actually became very insecure about the shape of my legs. And even as I continue to like do cheer more often and do soccer more often, by the time I got to high school, I was in a creative arts high school, and my focus was dance. And even that became a source of insecurity for me because I was completely different than any of the girls there. Because I did have an athletic shape, I did have broader shoulders, I was a lot shorter, like you mentioned, Nancy, and my legs were a lot thicker than the other girls in my dance classes. And I tried to stick it out for as long as I could. I would say up until maybe my senior year in high school. And at that point, I was just tired of being compared to other girls, even if it was my own comparison. And it really forced me to. I focused on the image more than I did my talent. And at my senior high school, I just gave up dance because I got to a point to where I was like, well, I'm never going to be that girl who's going to be front row, I'm always, because my dance teachers always push me to the side or push me to the back, so it's like, why am I even forced this? So I think that's when I kind of had that collision of body image, and that whole idea of dancing just kind of stopped right there my senior year. So, like I said, my experience is not as extensive as you guys, but I do have some things that kind of affected how
your experience matters. Yeah.
Right.
So, us all being HBCU alum, how has HBCU cheerleaders or dancers shaped your life or shaped your idea of Black womanhood? Maybe it was growing up as a child and you watching these HBCU dancers or cheerleaders, or even up until this point, how has it shaped your idea of Black womanhood?
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in on that. I will say, again, I was very sheltered per se, and you guys might laugh at me. You probably are gonna laugh at me. But every Thanksgiving, my stepdad would go. Him and his dad would go to the Bayou Classic, and my family would come in town once we moved to Louisiana. So they would all come in town for Thanksgiving, and every Saturday, my stepdad and his dad would go to this Bayou Classic. And so I remember one year, it was actually my junior year in high school, one of my aunts was like, well, where's Mark? And my mom was like, oh, him and his dad go to the Bayou Classic every year. And my aunt was like, well, what's that? Mm-hmm. And me, so nonchalantly and so serious about this, lean over and I'm like, oh, it's like a big fishing bowl, I think, that they go to.
Yes, a fishing bowl.
and my mom like whips her head around and gives me the craziest look. She's like, no, it's not. And I was like, oh, well, what is it? Like that? Because I just know my stepdad and his dad love to go fishing. So they say Bayou Classic. I'm like, they're probably in a bayou somewhere fishing. And so my mom was like, it's a big football game. And I was like, oh, I'm playing. And I'm like, really have no clue about this. I'm like, who's playing? I'm thinking it's like an NFL team or something. And she was like, no, it's 2 Black colleges. Like, it's a really big thing. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I never knew. And so I guess my mom, like, just could not deal with me after that. So next year, she made sure we all went to the Bayou Classic. And so that was my senior year in high school was my very first time ever going to a Black college football game. Like, I had never even been to a Southern game since we had moved to Louisiana. And so I went to that Bayou Classic my senior year, and I was like in awe of the cheerleaders. And so just to see Southern's cheerleaders, I mean, and even Gramblin's, like all these African American girls on one team, and I was just like, they're amazing. Like, they're flying in the air, they're flipping all over the place, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And me, I love football. Like, I couldn't even focus on football because I was so in awe of the cheerleaders and the dancing dolls, and it was like a true experience for me. And so between my mom and my high school coach, her name was Melissa Jenkins, and then Coach James at Southern, my mom came there one day to pick me up as I was practicing with Melissa, and he talked to her. And my mom kind of got me home, and she was like, he's willing to give you a scholarship if you, decide to go to Southern instead of Northwestern. I did. I tried out, and to this day, I tell my mom and my coach, my high school coach, it's probably the best decision they ever could have made for me. I am just super elated that I ended up having that experience, because when I tell you, I didn't even know what a historically Black college was before I got to Southern University. And it has truly shaped me, I think, drastically. Just being able to I come from a very diverse background, especially and having moved around a lot, but I just had never been surrounded by my people, my very own people, to the extent that I was when I got to Southern University. And to see the diversity within my own culture was just amazing to me. And it was very eye-opening for me. And I believe that had I not gone to Southern, I would be a completely different person. I think back to before I got to Southern and a lot of things that I was very ignorant about and a lot of things I didn't know as a kid and a young adult. Had I not had that experience, I don't think I would be the Black woman that I am today. Going to a historically Black college, especially the Southern University, has really shaped me into the person that I am today. That would definitely have to be my experience in general as a Black woman, as a student, as a cheerleader, just as everything. It really shaped me into who I am.
What about you, Nancy?
Well, it's funny because, Chastity, I'm not too far from your story. You pretty much said everything I could say, but it's funny because I lived in Cedar Hill, Texas, before moving to Louisiana, like I said before, and I didn't know what an HBCU was. I was familiar by my senior year because my sister decided to go to Southern, my sister and my big cousin. And so that's how I found out about the Dancing Dolls, was because we went my senior year. Me, my entire family, and a couple of my friends from high school, they let them ride along, and we all went down to the Bayou Classic. And when we were there, we went to the game, and we saw the Dancing Dolls. And I became just, of course, like infatuated with them and their style, but I wasn't familiar with it. And so what I've learned all of my years of dance was like military style dance, technique and jazz and ballet. And it wasn't the style that they had at all. They were very sensual, very like sexy. They looked like women when they were dancing. Then, of course, like even the costumes, the uniforms were totally different than what we would wear in high school, of course. And so all of it was just like eye-opening. And so when I got to Southern, the first thing that I went for was the audition for the Dancing Dolls. And when I was there, I can remember standing in that line with all those girls who were coming to audition. and all of us looking completely different, but so many people being so confident about joining the team because they have been raised on watching the Dancing Dolls since they were 2 years old. Well, I didn't have that same experience as them. So mine was just a little different in knowing that, okay, if I don't make it, it's just because I don't know this style. But like Cassie said, I didn't know much about it, but I knew that I wanted to be that. I knew that it inspired me to be a different type of dancer. It also opened up my eyes to the different styles of stylized jazz that there are out there for dancers. It shaped my idea in knowing that there are different, like I said, different styles and different body types of dancers that are out there instead of the ones that were just being televised at the time when I was in high school. Those people who were doing mainstream dance didn't look like me. I had a chance to see that, and it did give me confidence. It gave me a different level of confidence as a dancer.
So you actually brought up a good point that I want to touch on next. Being immersed in the HBCU culture, and as you all know, Black women, we come in all different shapes and sizes, right? And as someone who was in that dance creative space, do you think Black dancers and cheerleaders, do they suffer more in predominantly Black and brown spaces in regards to body image, like at a HBCU versus their counterparts in other places?
Ooh, no. Yes and no. Yes, okay. Because when we are in maybe other spaces that don't look like us, there's a standard that's already been set hundreds of years ago. And if we don't meet it, we can always kind of fall back on, well, because of my shape or because of my genetics, or because of my look. But in the Black world of dance, we're really hard we judge only because I can say this because I've experienced it, and from my experience, and this is not every Black dancer's experience, but from my experience as a Black dancer, the judgment is so much more critical than when I was in a white dance space. And that may just be because of the people and because of the directors that I had. But I had a lot of criticism from dancers and coaches when dancing with Black dance teams. I can remember being on a college team, being in college and dancing, and one of our sponsors told me when the dance team we got off the field and we were going to eat upstairs, like we always would eat sometimes upstairs, and she told me not to even look at the food, don't even breathe that way.
Wow.
I can remember how that made me feel. Yeah, I can remember how that made me feel when everyone else got to go and eat, but I couldn't. Or even feeling like, well, they won't be able to wear certain uniforms because of me. And it wasn't that I wasn't small, because I look back on it now, of course, as a woman, and I'm like, girl, you were small. But as a dancer, I felt huge because I was being made to feel like I was huge. I think I was every bit of 121 pounds. But 121 pounds next to the other girl still looked like I was well overweight. Getting that criticism from those people who were close to you who still look like you, I think that's what it is that hurts, that creates a pit of pain, is knowing that, we share the same experience as Black dancers, yet we still tear each other down.
I would definitely have to piggyback off of what Nancy said. It's yes and no. I can remember just the difference from going from college cheer to professional cheer, and even in the realm of professional cheer for a while. The Rockets have a dance team and they have a cheerleading team, and a lot of people don't really know the difference or distinguish the difference if you're not in the cheer and dance world. So whereas we had probably a pretty diverse dance team with the Rockets, for a while I was the only African American female cheerleader with the Rockets for at least 2 years or so. And I can remember this balancing thing that I would have to do. I never felt criticized in the terms of my body image when I cheered with the Rockets in comparison to cheering at Southern. And again, like Nancy said, looking back at even the statement that my coaches may have made in terms of, oh, you're getting big or you look bloated. Like I've never even been over 110 pounds while in college. So just to think about that now, I'm like, you really were concerned about how you looked in your uniform. And I tell people all the time, being big is one thing, but in the cheer and the dance world, big is totally different. I know I'm not a big person, like I know this, but in the cheer world, there is a body image that you're kind of tailored to, and even though we have all the political correctness when it comes to trying out and auditioning on all those realms, there was never a weight limit that was set. It was just always, you have to look the part. You have to look a certain way in your uniform. They're never going to put a number on it because that's just not politically correct. But at the same time, yeah, we would get on the scale and I need to see what you weigh. And just things like that, especially being a flyer and being in the air, you have to be able to hold your weight per se. And so a lot of times I did feel like I didn't fit the image. And then when I think back to Southern in comparison to cheering professionally, it was more so then once I got to the Rockets, not necessarily feeling criticized because of my size, but me personally, trying to make sure that I can stay within a realm because I am still an African-American young lady and my body type is a little different than the girls that I'm cheering with. I've always been small, but I've always been muscular. I've always just had this little body of muscle, and that's always what I was. And so sometimes that's not viewed as sensual or sexy. And in the realm of cheerleading, especially professionally, let alone at Southern, the image is you guys are here to sell, Yeah, you're entertainment, but we're trying to sell calendars. We're trying to do X, Y, and Z. I need you to look a certain type of way. And so I always had to do this balancing thing of not necessarily, I just wanted this slender look, not necessarily this muscular look, because I didn't really fit the same body type as the rest of my teammates. And then, so I always did this balancing thing, let alone cheering and then being an actual adult as an African-American woman. Well, I don't want to be too big cheer-wise, but I don't want to be too little either because I want the curves, I want side, bottom, because I'm an African-American woman and that's what, my culture is used to seeing. And so I wanted that identity, but I also didn't want to mess up my cheer identity. So it was like I had to do this balancing thing where I didn't have too much muscle. I had just enough curves. And so, and there was times where I was like, well, it's just never going to be what you want. It's just more so what you have to do to please the areas of the life that you're in right now. And so that was just kind of always my own personal struggling balance to be Black enough and to be cheerleader enough in the same sense, if that makes sense.
I was just going to say about the after effect of that, and I'm sure you're going to get into that at some point, Hope, but the after effect of just having to fill that void of feeling like, okay, am I small enough, or that continues like throughout life. And I'm not speaking for you, Chastity, I'm just speaking for myself, just always like knowing, even, through social media or anything, like just this imagery that I have of this image that I would like to have of myself, continues to pick at me, even if it's in the back of my mind. It's like, well, I know you need to be smaller, or, it's just this thing, and it's from dancing. It's from dancing, for so many years. It's just always just my body image. It matters to me. And I try to tell myself, which I believe, that's okay. It's okay to want to look your best. It's okay to want to be healthy. It's okay, but it's not okay to constantly think about your weight. And especially and I have a daughter, and I can remember when I had my daughter and thinking to myself, because my daughter is tall and she is slender, and I was like, she will not have the same challenges that I had. I got to get her in dance, and I went and I got her in ballet, started when she was 2. And now she's 9, she's about to be 10, and she does not want to do ballet. Like, she doesn't want to do it. And I'm like, girl, like, these opportunities that I do not get, I never got to have these same opportunities as you,
Yeah.
But she doesn't want to do it. And I'm like, that's okay, because I don't want her to struggle with these things that I struggled with as a dancer. And as she was growing up, she would see me talking about my image. And I had to stop that. I think I stopped that maybe when she was about 4, before, and I didn't realize I was doing it until one of my friends pointed it out to me, and I was talking about my weight, and I wasn't big, but I was just like, ooh, I need to lose some of this stomach, girl. And I would talk like that in front of her. And I realized when my friend pointed it out, I was like, okay, this is a thing. Like, I shouldn't be this concerned, especially not in front of my child who shouldn't be thinking about what she looks like, and that came from, I believe it stemmed from me dancing and always being reminded of what I looked like and how important it was for me to look the part. Like Chastity said, we're selling this, you're on TV, you're always in the spotlight, and what you look like, it matters, period, point, and blank. It matters. So always being constantly reminded of that your image matters, then you continue through life realizing my image matters. And that can be good, but it also can be overbearing.
Are eating disorders something that is common? Because sometimes you don't hear a lot about eating disorders in the Black community, right? But is that something very common among Black dancers and cheerleaders, especially in the HBCU world? Are eating disorders a thing?
Yes. Absolutely. Sometimes it can be a learned disorder that's brought on by pressure, and someone telling you what they did in order to lose their weight. I know that for me, at one point, while dancing, I was like, let me go ahead and try out sticking this finger down my throat to get this weight off because I can't get it off. Until I had to snap out of that, and of course had some amazing people on my side, like, hey, you don't have to do that. You're perfectly qualified to be the dancer that you are. And that was really tough. That was something that I dealt with, and I'm sure that a lot of dancers in general deal with. And that wasn't something that just like lasted for a long time or anything like that, but it mattered. Right. That I would even have the thoughts and even have the desire to want to do that to myself in order to fit someone else's image, because we're conditioned to listen to what everyone else has to say. And I do want to take a break in that and say, in Chastity, it's so admirable to me watching you speak out, because I know that as a performer, period, as a performance artist, you are conditioned to listen to what everyone has to say. And whenever we finally do stand up and say, like, no, I'm going to do what's best for me. Sometimes the world, they still have their opinions, but it's something so admirable about you and other dancers and other cheerleaders and all of us standing up and saying, you know what, I'm a grown woman now, and I wish I had done this when I was younger. I don't really care about what anybody has to say about my journey and what I'm doing in my life, and just living it. So, yeah, that is something that is prevalent in all cultures, I believe, with dance and with being a performance artist, is being aware of what people are saying and digesting it and going, wait a second, what can I do to change me? Instead of, as an artist, thinking, I'm an artist. I'm so close to God that I create. I'm a creator. I can create my own creative space where I exist and where I belong. And it's okay for me to look this way. And so, yeah, we deal with those different type of eating disorders, and some deal with mental disorders, and some deal with different things to try and cope with how they've been made to feel about their image. So yeah, I would say yes.
Well, I was just gonna piggyback again off of the eating disorders in general. The fact that Nancy said, even though it wasn't this long, drawn out process that maybe took place with her, but the thought of, well, let me stick my finger down my throat and just throw up to try to get this weight off, I can remember having teammates that would literally take like their little siblings medication, because you can go days without eating if you take this medication, and, things like that, just to fit this body image of, well, coach said he's ordering this size uniform. If I don't fit in it, then I just won't be cheering type thing. And I think people would be surprised because, and I hope I'm not generalizing a population or a culture of people, but I just think people would be surprised to know that a lot of things that we in our community believe are things of other people's communities, it happens. And it happens a lot more than we are aware of, than we are even wanting to be aware of. So I definitely wanted to just advocate the fact that what Nancy is saying, the thought alone should be enough for us to say, okay, what can we do to encourage, our dancers, our cheerleaders, our culture, so they don't feel like we have to fit in a box. That's not who we are as a culture anyways. We're always outside the box.
Right.
So for young girls now who are cheering and dancing, on collegiate levels, on professional levels, to understand, like Nancy said, we're creative beings, not only as dancers and cheerleaders, but as a culture. You don't have to fit the box, because the box it'll border you. Whatever you're doing, a lot of times people are attracted to what we do and how we create and how we make our spaces comfortable for us, because that's what we've had to do all our lives. So getting in a space where we're not trying to conform, but that we understand we are creators, and what we do, people are going to be attracted to regardless.
Yeah. That leads me to my next question. That would be, I believe, Alabama State University. They created they became more intentional about body positivity and created what I think it's called the Honeybees. And they are a group of girls who dance, but they are not your standard small size dancers. They are, I guess you would say, plus size. Mm-hmm. Now, in regards to HBCU, do you think that will be more accepting, or will that cause for more criticism for dance teams and cheer teams to intentionally be more body positive and create, like you said, their own space of girls or dancers, performers who are not that standard size?
I would, I was going to say, I would love to give the thought that, or the optimistic answer that it is going to create this more positive body image realm of speaking. But if I'm being completely honest, I think it'll definitely get a lot more criticism before it gets anything else. As unfortunate as it is, it will, especially in the realm of historically Black colleges. And not to say that, we like to tear each other down, but at the same time, it's conditioning. We're used to what we're used to. We're used to seeing what we see. We believe, regardless of what our character and our moral and our values may say, we believe you should look a certain way. So much so that me, you, and Nancy just said in the back of our heads, I'm thinking, okay, even though I'm not cheering anymore and I'm not doing this, I still have this image that I feel like I have to obtain.
Right.
And I think that we're just conditioned that way because we've been doing it for so long, that the criticism will definitely come before the positivity that individuals are trying to bring from it gets the light that it probably should.
I don't know what is going to happen. I just know what I've seen. I think it definitely will get some criticism, but it also will shed light on what we need in that space that we need for anyone to see that it doesn't matter how you look. If the dance is in your soul, let it out. I think about when Doc decided that he wanted dancers for Southern, and he had Mama Gracie go over to Southern Lab and pick up those girls that she knew to be dancers. I'm sure that there was no set expectation, but she created one. Mm-hmm. There was no set expectation on how they should look, how they should dance. She created it. And soon enough, the world fell in love with it. And I hope that can become something that's more mainstream, that girls can see you can go to HBCUs and you can still dance. Because I hear a lot whenever girls are wanting to go to Southern or wanting to go to any HBCU, they're dancing in high school, and then they go, but I can't dance when I get to college because, I don't look like them. Mm-hmm. To me, that's so discouraging, because I feel like, well, are you good at it? Do you enjoy doing it? Is it a part of your artistry? Okay, then you should do it, but if there's no space there for them. So hopefully other schools will catch on and they will too do like what Alabama State is doing and have more teams. And we had a couple of extra teams, but you still had to look a certain way and fit in those uniforms. But we did have other teams that were not as strict as dogs when it came to your image and what you look like. So I do hope that other schools catch on and even do like dance companies. Like Griff has a dance company, and they do a full company where some girls go on the field and some girls do not. And I would hope, now I've never been there to witness this, but I would hope that they have all size dancers. And let me take that back. All dancers who are in shape, who are conditioned to dance, I should say it like that, because at the end of the day, it is a sport and you do have to be in shape and be healthy to pursue it. So I hope that people are making more companies and creative spaces for those people who do not have that same outlet, like being on Dancing Dolls or being on the actual mainstream dance teams, and creating a space for them to enjoy their artistic capabilities of dance.
Because, I think it's becoming more acceptable in the mainstream. So you have Beyonce that she brings on dancers who are, not small. I think who was that? Sierra may have had a couple of dancers, and there are a lot of performers, like celebrity performers, who are Janet Jackson, who are accepting this body positive image. But I would agree with you, Chastity, that I don't know. At this point, I feel as though, because we've seen it every so often when someone who's a bigger size are highlighted maybe on the field, and it almost seems as though it becomes a mockery. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, whether it's a flag girl, whether it's somebody who's in the band in general, and they get a highlighted spot, I think it becomes more of a let's do this for fun versus let's make this a thing. Now, like you said, Nancy, I would hope that in the future that we do start to create these spaces where we are more accepting and supportive of all sides.
I agree with you that it is like a mockery of some sort sometimes when it's not done tastefully, or when it's done and it's like, oh, like she's the anomaly, like, oh my goodness, she can dance, right? So I agree with you. Yeah.
And I was gonna say, just taking from both of you all, I think that aside from the criticism that it might get, you're absolutely right. Sometimes I think it's made a mockery, because I can remember even cheering. There was always this one guy from the team who was plus size, heavy set guy, and he could flip like crazy. And it was always a thing, like, okay, we want to see him flip. And so I think taking from what Nancy said in terms of, healthy, athletic build, talented skill level, I think that'll make the difference too. It's one thing to push a positive body image when the talent and the skill and the athleticism is there, instead of just pushing it because you have a bigger person or a heavier set person or a plus size person. Yeah. There's a difference there, So I don't want people to construe this in criticism in terms of the skill level is one thing and then your body image is another. So, the two have to go hand in hand. Yes, we can push body image for dance and cheer as long as the skill and the talent is there. I don't think it should be this whoa factor, like how did they do that solely because they're bigger. It should just more so be, it's okay to be this size and be that good. Like, your size doesn't dictate what you can and cannot do, So I think in that realm, as long as it's tasteful, it's talent, it's skill, it's healthy, absolutely push it in. And from that stance, you might see that you get a more positive reaction more so than the criticism of it, because unfortunately, that's not what is in the mainstream and that's not what we see. So we are excited when we see that push, because it is positive in a light and we're in all of it. And it's like, man, she or he is amazing. But that's because you don't see it enough to understand that there's so many people out here that are amazing that don't get that opportunity solely because of the body image.
Yeah, and it's like they get cut off at high school, because I can remember being in high school and you had dancers and cheerleaders who were all sizes. And I mean, talk about talented and winning different contests and competitions. And then you get to college and it's just like, it's different. It's just a little different.
Right.
So both of you actually work with young girls in creative spaces. So what principles are you teaching your young girls, whether they dance, cheer, or perform in other creative ways, who maybe have some type of body image struggle, and they may be interested in dance or somewhere where they have to put themselves, I guess, on display for other people to obviously criticize their talent as well as how they look? Like, what are some things that you guys are doing to instill a positive body image for those?
Well, the first thing for me is I always try and be the example. I'm always, if they ever pick on themselves, I'm like, girl, you got some unlearning to do. Like, that's one of my things I say to people, like, you have some unlearning to do, because we've learned so much of this. And they see it so much on social media, especially what they should look like. And so I always tell them they have some unlearning to do. And I try and help by being the actual example. And like I said before, I try and remind them that they deserve to be in every room that they enter. That's something that we just have to drill into our girls' minds, is that you deserve this. You deserve to be in every room that you enter, every dance room. It doesn't matter what dance genre, it doesn't matter what style. And even just as actors, I remind them that they deserve to be in every single room that they step in, and that they will be an asset to that room, but that they won't if they enable themselves and tell themselves that they cannot do it.
I would definitely go off what Nancy said as well. You know, I definitely try to be the example. And in cheer and dance, especially at these younger ages, you know, you do get all types of body styles. You know, they're young, they're still growing into their bodies at the same time. And so with cheer, I think it's always this theme. You know, everybody wants to be a flyer. For the life of me, I can't figure out why. Maybe it's a kid thing, but everybody wants to be a flyer. And even at that age, like, kids are conditioned to tell other kids, you're too big. You know, you're too big to fly. And I just really, when it comes to those type of things, I just always try to tell my girls, everybody has their position. Nobody's position is more important than the next person's position. You know, I need my back spot because you're saving lives. You know, I need my bases because without you, who gets in the air? We don't have anything to put in the air. Exactly. You know, I need my flyer because you need to be up there so we have somebody to put in the air, but you still have an important role to play, because just because they're picking you up doesn't mean you're going to stay up there.
Right.
So I just try to make them understand that you have different positions regardless. You know, this year, this is where you are. Next year, you might be somewhere else. And because of that, you know, I just hope that they all understand that just because you're not in the air, that doesn't mean you're a big person. That just means that's not your position, you know? And I just try to give them this sense of accomplishment. Regardless of where you are, you're needed. You're enough, you're needed. And in order for this team to work, you have to play your position. And so I hope that that's enough in the moment for them to understand that what I'm doing makes the difference. You know, who I am, my strength makes the difference. My body type makes the difference as to whether this works or not. And so, you know, again, and anytime I hear them maybe saying things that are inappropriate to one another, I'm kind of like Nancy. You know, I don't use the term, we've got some unlearning to do. I might start using that, though. But, you know, we're not going to do that. What we're not going to do is tear each other down. You know, we're one. That's your sister. That's your sister. And she's not too big. She's perfect for what we need her for. You know, you're perfect for what we need you for. And so I just try to build this family unit of where they understand that we have to encourage each other, because once you guys go your separate ways and maybe you do get on these collegiate teams, you might not have that same encouragement. So if you can get it now and you can understand your value and your worth regardless of where you are, it's not going to matter what anybody tells you, because you learned at such an early age that I'm perfect for what it is you need me for, because if I wasn't, I wouldn't be here.
So before we wrap things up, I would like to know, what advice would you offer to anyone who may be suffering with their weight or have body image issues, whether they're too small, they feel like they're too small or too big, but they have the talent and the passion and desire to dance at the collegiate level and above?
My advice to an individual like that would be simply this, and I know it's easier said than done, but you just really have to fall in love with where you are in order for you to get to where you're trying to go. So maybe you're not the happiest with your body style or your body image in this moment, but it's you in this moment. Like I tell my girls all the time, who you are in this moment is exactly who you're supposed to be. And if you want to be somewhere else, then you're going to have to get there by accepting who you are right now. And so if that means getting a trainer to get to a healthy size, not to get to the image that you feel like you have to be to make this team, but to get to a healthy athletic size that is going to be complimenting for you, do that. Do what's necessary to keep you happy and healthy. But if I can stress anything else, I even tell my clients, my fitness clients, we all have these body goals. We see somebody and we're like, body goals. Be your own goal. It's okay to see something and say, hey, this is kind of my frame and I think I want to get to her size. That's cool. But I just hate to see people obsess over other people, because you will never be that person. And you have to be okay with that. So just get your goals in mind, but understand that your goals are always going to have to be you. You are your body goals, period. Whatever that goal is, you have to get there. So, make your goal and get there to make you happy, not to make the world happy or to fit in this box to be what you think it is you want to be. Because you'll understand once you get in this box, you can get stuck there. And then you're not happy with who you are. And I think that's the biggest thing, being happy with who you are.
Yes. I think she said everything. That was pretty amazing. And that's the only thing I would add to that would just be, I would encourage them to have the courage to be themselves. I would tell them to have the courage to be yourself and strive towards the best version of yourself, and create your own space. Damn it. Just create the best you and create
That's
your own
right.
space where you can dance or hear or act or whatever it is, where you can be you and you can start off by accepting you, and your creativity that you add to the world. I would remind them that they are an asset, and that they would have to know that they are creating a space for other young girls to look to. So it can't be like someone else's space that has already been created. But they are important enough to create their own space for the future. So that's what I would add to what Chastity said.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the My Lotus Moments podcast with Hope. If you enjoyed this episode, share the Apple Podcast with a friend or someone you know who needs it. And please take a few minutes to rate and review the show, because that is how other people find us. And if you're talking about this episode online, don't forget to use the hashtag MyLotusMoments and tag me at JustMoreHope on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time, thanks for listening.